Hello there, my lovelies. How's it going? Welcome back to my channel, Boomy Reactions. For those of you who are new, I'm Boomy, and thank you for watching. Now, today, guys, we've got a video for the history lovers out there, including myself. So this video has been requested by one of my wonderful patrons. So this is from Dummy666. Where does your name come from? And so this video is America's Spartans, the 400 who saved Washington's army from the Battle of Long Island in 1776. So, okay, I feel like I haven't done a history-related video for quite a while, so let's bring myself up to speed. So we're talking about the American Revolution, the War of Independence, of course we are. Now, this battle, I know it by name. I don't know all of the ins and outs and the details, but we're talking about the Battle of the Battle of Long Island. It's the first major battle that's taken place since America has declared independence, on obviously the 4th of July, the same year. Okay, so yes, an important, decisive battle. I know how it ends. I know the outcome. But this is news to me. This is America's Spartans. Oh my gosh. Okay, it sounds very interesting. So, okay, there is one question that always kind of stayed in my mind when we talk about the American Revolution and the British Army being such a vast, numbered, oppressive force. Absolutely. But I've always wondered, where do we get our numbers from? Because we're a tiny, weeny little island. We're a small little nation. So how do we end up with such a large army? And I had to do a little bit of digging into this because I was asking myself this over and over again when I was watching these videos on the American Revolution. And yeah, the simple answer is just that we hired auxiliaries. I want to say mercenaries, but there is a difference, isn't there? Not quite mercenaries. So there was a big force from Germany in particular. I don't know if they're going to show up in this particular battle, but it did massively bulk up the numbers of the British army. The Hessian army, I think. So, yeah, our king at the time is George III, who is a German prince from the House of Hanover. And so it's no surprise that there are ties to the British army there with Germany. And Germany, this is before Germany's like a unified nation, really, isn't it? So they're kind of made up of lots of different states. One of these states is it Hesse? And yeah, quite a military kind of state. And yeah, we employed, I want to say employed because they were paid very well. We employed their soldiers, and that's what bulked up the numbers. Anyway, I'm blabbing away at this point, guys, just to bring myself up to speed so I know the ins and outs before we go into this video. So here we are. We are just after, I don't know when exactly does this battle take place, but it's just shortly after the Declaration of Independence. Same year. Okay. Oh gosh, I talk so much. I'm sorry, guys. If you're enjoying these reactions, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you so much, my lovelies. If you're interested, I have a Buy Me Coffee account, and that link is over here. And if you would like to help support my channel any further, I have a Patreon account. And if you ever fancy checking that out, that link is in the description below. Let's finally play the video.
August 27th, 1776.
Oh, in August!
The Battle of Long Island. The first major battle of the Revolutionary War. And for the Americans, a catastrophe. A British surprise attack sends George Washington's army into chaos. Thousands of American soldiers are now trapped, encircled by 20,000 enemy troops. Independence, declared just 5 weeks ago, is about to be crushed. Then, fewer than 400 men from the 1st Maryland Regiment, young farmers and merchants volunteer for a suicide mission. Hold the line. Buy time for the army to escape. The final hour is a terrifying last stand. This is the story of how the Maryland 400 saved Washington's army and the American Revolution itself.
The Maryland 400. Oh, this is America's Spartans. Dummy666. Here we are. Okay. All right. Okay. So they sacrificed themselves. They volunteered. Oh gosh.
April 19th, 1775. Lexington and Concord. The first shots of the American Revolution.
Yes.
What began as a raid on colonial weapons quickly spiraled into open warfare. 2 months later came the carnage of Bunker Hill. The British won, but paid a devastating price, over 1,000 casualties, their costliest engagement of the entire war. The colonists had proved they could stand and fight against the world's most powerful army.
I think that must have come as quite the shock to the quite probably arrogant British forces. Actually, you're going to be fighting a very, very bloody war. There's going to be losses on both sides, but you're not going to come away from it unscathed. So pick your battles.
For nearly a year, General George Washington laid siege to Boston. Finally, in March of 1776, British commander General William Howe is forced to evacuate, sailing north to Nova Scotia to regroup. Washington had won his first major victory, but he knew this was far from over. The British would return. The question was, where? Washington predicted that the next target would be New York. The city's deep water ports could supply and anchor the entire British fleet. Control New York, and you control the Hudson River, splitting New England from the rest of the colonies. Sever it, and the rebellion would be cut in half. In April of 1776, Washington relocated his fledgling Continental Army and began fortifying New York. But New York presented problems Boston never had. The terrain was a nightmare. Islands, rivers, and waterways were everywhere, and the Americans had no navy to defend them. The British fleet could strike from any direction.
It's very vulnerable to the the big old British fleet.
Worse, New York was a loyalist stronghold. Nearly half the population supported the crown. Loyalists in the countryside were actively working against Washington, intercepting vital messages and capturing supplies. Spies were everywhere. Trust was scarce.
Were they just force feeding someone tea? Can we go back? Is that what I just saw?
Spies were everywhere.
Oh no, oh gosh, this man has been tarred and feathered. But really? I mean, that's quite comical, being force-fed tea. You gotta be British. Drink your tea.
Trust was scarce.
It says tea.
Washington assumed they'd strike Manhattan directly, but he makes a critical mistake. He divides his army, 19,000 men, scattered across multiple positions. The bulk stay on Manhattan to defend the city. A smaller force, just 4,500 men, are sent across the East River to Long Island.
Yeah, but I imagine because of the layout of the land here, and like they said, the British naval fleet can approach in a number of different directions, leaving the main bulk of your army in one place. You know, you don't want to be surrounded on either side and then maybe cut off. So I don't know. I assume that's the mentality. I kind of get it.
In early July 1776, General Howe returned. A massive British armada,
At New York,
growing
yeah.
to over 300 ships, arrives off Staten Island. The largest expeditionary force ever assembled by the British Empire. Packed aboard are more than 32,000 soldiers, British regulars, Scottish Highlanders, and thousands of German Hessian mercenaries.
This is an odd one because the Jacobite rebellion has not long been fought earlier. Well, kind of over 50 years earlier than this, isn't it? Well, how long did it go on for? Anyway, I wouldn't have expected that many Highlanders to be fighting with the British army, but then again, maybe they're forced to. I don't know. Another thing sticks in my mind, guys. I don't know if anyone can answer all of these questions I'm bound to have during this video. But yeah, the British forces are kind of, you know, we're involved in an awful lot of conflicts during this century. How is it possible to have this number of soldiers? Because, you know, we've been here, there, and everywhere, haven't we? We've been fighting Spain, Austria, Canada, India, but I think that's a little bit later on, and yeah, and the Jacobite rebellion. So, you know, there's a lot of battles going on in that century, but yeah, okay.
Leading them
Anyway.
are some of Britain's most experienced commanders, including Lord Cornwallis and Sir Henry Clinton. 2 days later, on July 4th, the Continental Congress in Philadelphia signs the Declaration of Independence.
Yep.
When news of independence reaches New York, Washington gathers his troops to hear the declaration read aloud in the public square. The men cheered, bells rang, and for a brief moment, anything seemed possible.
Aww.
That night, a mob descended and tore down the massive equestrian statue of King George III. Cutting off the king's head, they mounted on a spike outside a local tavern. The rest of the statue is then melted down and cast into musket balls. The tyrant king transformed into bullets for his own army. But across the harbor on Staten Island, the celebration looked very different. British officers watched the bonfires and heard the distant cheers. They weren't worried. They knew what Washington was trying to hold together. The Continental Army was barely an army at all. Most were militia farmers and tradesmen who'd never fired a shot in anger. They drilled poorly, if they drilled at all. Desertions were constant. Disease tore through the camps. Dysentery, smallpox, typhus. Men were dying faster than they could be replaced.
Really?
Worse still, the army was fractured by colonial rivalries. Massachusetts men wouldn't take orders from Virginia officers. New Yorkers distrusted New Englanders. Regiments bickered over supplies, rank, and territory.
They need someone to unite them, don't they?
But the 1st Maryland Regiment is different. While most Continental soldiers drilled poorly and fought in rags, the Marylanders were well paid, well trained, and looked like professionals. Crisp uniforms, blue coats and red facings, and hunting shirts for field dress. They carried polished muskets and something almost no other American unit had: bayonets. Real steel that could turn a musket into a spear in close combat. They were young, averaging barely 21 years of age, sons of wealthy merchants, apprentice clerks, a few plantation owners, recruited mainly from the port city of Baltimore and the colonial capital of Annapolis. When they joined Washington's army in New York, they were mockingly called the macaronis, dandies, pretty boys in fancy uniforms.
The dandies. They're just jealous of those beautiful uniforms, boys. Don't you listen to them. So quite the addition to Washington's army here. They're going to give the British a good run for their money, aren't they? Do you think the British are aware of the Maryland 400 at this point, or are they unpleasantly surprised when they meet them on the battlefield?
But to the Hessians, seeing the hunting shirts meant one thing: American sharpshooters.
Okay, yeah, the Hessians
700
strong,
strong,
aren't they?
the Maryland Regiment was commanded by Colonel William Smallwood, but Smallwood would be unexpectedly called away to oversee a court-martial, with command falling to General William Alexander, who styled himself Lord Stirling after a disputed Scottish title. Major Mordecai Gist, a Baltimore native, leads the regiment. Positioned on Long Island, these elite troops anchored the American right flank near Brooklyn. They had no idea what was coming. On August 22nd, the British made their move, but not toward New York. 4,000 British troops, led by Sir Henry Clinton and Lord Cornwallis, land unopposed on Long Island. Within hours, 15,000 troops are ashore, alongside 40 pieces of artillery. Hundreds of loyalists swarm the beach to greet them as liberators. Word reaches Washington in New York, but the report is wrong. His scouts estimate only 8,000 troops had landed. Washington is convinced this is a feint. The real attack would come at Manhattan. So he sends a meager 1,500 reinforcements to Brooklyn, totaling the American forces on Long Island to 6,000 men. The American defense is centered across the Guan Heights, a 150-foot ridge of hills, blocking the direct route to fortifications at Brooklyn. 3 main passes through the heights, Gowanus, Flatbush, and Bedford, are heavily guarded. By stationing men on the higher ground, heavy casualties could be inflicted on the British before the troops would fall back to the main defenses.
Okay.
General Israel Putnam commands Brooklyn Heights. Lord Sterling and his Marylanders and the 1st Delaware Regiment hold the American right at Gowanus Pass with 1,600 men, and Major General John Sullivan, commander of the force on Long Island, holds the center with 1,500 men. Colonel Samuel Miles and his Pennsylvania Rifle Regiment holding the hill to the east at around 500 men.
I know they've got, terrain speaking and everything, they've got the advantage, but they managed to hold those positions with not a lot of men. Wow.
But there is a 4th route, the Jamaica Pass, far to the east. A local loyalist informs General Clinton of the route.
Of course they do.
Patrolled by just 4 militia officers on horseback. Clinton sees the opportunity. General Howe approves. On August 26th, at 9 p.m., under cover of darkness, 10,000 British troops begin a night march toward the Jamaica Pass. It is one of the most audacious gambles of the war. The column stretches over 2 miles. An advance party is led by Clinton, followed by Cornwallis and General Howe. They leave their campfires burning behind them to deceive the Americans. If discovered, the whole operation would collapse. 10,000 men strung out in the darkness on a narrow country road, unable to form battle lines, left them vulnerable. But the Americans had no idea. Around 2 a.m. on August 27th, they reach Howard's Tavern, just outside the Jamaica Pass. British soldiers drag tavern keeper William Howard and his son from their beds at gunpoint. General Howe needed a guide. William Howard refused. "We belong to the other side, General, and can't serve you against our duty."
Even in this region here, it's civilians are very divided, aren't they, between loyalists and I don't know, what's revolutionists? But they're very, very divided. It seems like it's the same everywhere, really.
Howe's response was calm and cold. "You have no alternative. If you refuse, I shall shoot you through the head." Howard guides them to the pass. Minutes later, the 4 American militia guarding the pass are captured without a shot, mistaking the approaching troops as fellow Americans.
Now, again, I've got another question. I've got so many questions, guys. I was thinking the American forces weren't aware of the Jamaica Pass, which is why it isn't manned. But they've left 4 men guarding the pass just to be on the safe side. So if they were aware of it, maybe that was a bit of an oversight. But saying that they've got 10,000 men here, it doesn't matter. If they put the same numbers at this pass, they've only got a small amount of men, haven't they? But even if they did overstretch and there's 10,000 British there, it's not gonna go well, is it?
General Howe has maintained the element of surprise.
Okay.
He has flanked the entire American army. Back on the east part of Long Island, at around 1 a.m., 4,000 British troops under General Grant launch a diversionary assault on Sterling's Marylanders at Gowanus Pass, holding them in place. Commanded on the ground by Major Mordecai Gist, twice the British attack the hill, and twice they are repulsed. At 6 a.m., in the center, Hessian artillery begin pounding the heights, but the German troops don't advance. They just sit there, waiting. The Americans think Grant's attack is the main assault. General Sullivan sends 400 men west to reinforce Sterling.
Oh no!
The Americans think they are winning. Back in New York, Washington finally realizes his mistake. This wasn't a feint. He races across the East River to Brooklyn Heights to take command. By 7 a.m., Cornwallis's flanking column silently rounds the American position and crushes Colonel Miles's small force, scattering them instantly.
That would have happened to any amount of men that they could spare to guard the Jamaica Pass or to man the Jamaica Pass. The same thing would have happened. They've got the numbers, haven't they?
Then, at 9 a.m., the situation dramatically changes. General Howe fires 2 heavy cannons, the signal for the Hessian troops to begin their frontal assault against Sullivan. Soon, the 10,000 British troops who'd marched through Jamaica Pass appear on the hilltops behind Sullivan's position. Panic. Sullivan's men are hit from 2 directions at once.
They're going to scatter.
Hessians in front, British regulars from behind. The line shatters instantly. Officers scream orders that no one could hear. Men throw down their weapons and run. Others froze, unsure which way to go, and are shot where they stood.
But I think we're talking about an army, like the narrator said, you know, it's mainly comprised of young lads that haven't got an awful lot of military experience, farming boys and civilians. This is probably their first time ever seeing conflict on this scale anyway. So yeah, you'd naturally assume that army's going to scatter, they're going to be quite disorganized, they're going to go to bits, aren't they?
The Hessians, driven by rumors that Americans take no prisoners, bayonet groups of surrendering soldiers. Major General Sullivan and many of his troops are captured. Private Joseph Plum Martin, who witnessed the carnage, would later write, "The demons of fear and disorder seemed to take full possession of all and everything that day. By noon, the American middle and left flank had been annihilated. Thousands of Continental soldiers, disorganized, terrified, separated from their officers, fled toward the only sanctuary left, the distant fortifications at Brooklyn Heights."
Goes to show the, I want to say the power of poor intel, or, you know, how detrimental it can be, how important accurate intel is to the leaders here.
But Cornwallis was faster. His elite regiments, the Black Watch of the 42nd Highlanders, and his grenadiers raced down Gowanus Road and seized the old stone house, the last escape route. Thousands of American soldiers are trapped in what is known as the Killing Box. Behind them, Gowanus Creek, a tidal salt marsh where the mud could swallow a man to his chest. In front, Cornwallis and 2,000 veteran British soldiers blocking the only road to safety. On their flanks, 25,000 more enemy troops are closing in. Major Gist recounts, "Surrounded on all sides, the result was a bloodbath as the Hessians and British Highlanders methodically gave no quarter or mercy."
At least he's not glorifying in it, you know. I think good commanders, good people in power and authority can recognize it's a war that both sides are fighting. There's going to be casualties on both sides, but it's not a glorified thing, is it? War's dirty and awful.
The American Revolution, just 52 days old, is dying on a Brooklyn battlefield. From his command post in Brooklyn Heights, General George Washington watches through his spyglass as his army, the only army America had, is being destroyed. He orders the remaining Americans to retreat, but they are trapped. To reach safety, they would have to cross the deadly 80-yard-wide barrier of the Gowanus Creek Marsh, a marsh that no man has been known to ever cross. If the British reached the creek first, the army would be slaughtered. Someone had to stand between them and the fleeing Americans. Someone had to buy them time. Washington turned to the only organized troops still capable of fighting, the forces under Lord Stirling, the Marylanders and Delawareans. They received their orders: perform a rearguard action, hold the line while their brothers escape. They take their positions. Musket smoke blanketing the land. The British press forward, appearing out of nowhere and everywhere through the smoke. With overwhelming numbers, the American detachments begin to crumble. The Delaware lines are overrun. Stirling soon orders their retreat as well. This left Lord Stirling aware that nothing but a diversion of the enemy would save the entire detachment from destruction. Hurrying to the Maryland battalion, he gathers fewer than 400 men. Major Mordecai Gist stands ready. Sterling gave them their mission: launch a suicidal counterattack on the British position at the Old Stone House, where Cornwallis's troops were pouring murderous fire from its windows. The order: hold it at all costs. Hold it until every last American soldier has crossed the Gowanus Marsh to safety. In an act of bravery, Sterling remains behind to fight with Gist's men. The 400 begin their advance. Their muskets crack in disciplined volleys, trying to slow the British surge. But the enemy keeps coming. British muskets erupt in almost solid sheets of lead. Cannons roar. Men fall. But the Marylanders close ranks over their dead and dying comrades and press forward. The first assault is driven back, leaving brothers crumpled on the ground. But something extraordinary happens. These bloodied men don't scatter or flee. They rally. Impossibly, they reform their lines amid the smoke and carnage. They fire another ragged volley, then with fixed bayonets charge again, straight into a wall of fire. Again they are thrown back, their ranks shattered, the ground littered with their fallen. And then they do the unthinkable. They know what another charge means. They had seen it twice already. They know they are not going home. But across that marsh, their brothers are still escaping. A third time, they rise. A third time, they charge. Fewer now, but unbroken. Each step forward a choice. They fire one last devastating volley at point-blank range, then crash into the British lines. The battle erupts into brutal hand-to-hand combat, bayonets thrusting, muskets swinging as clubs. Through smoke and fire, they press forward, not in blind rage, but with love. Outnumbered 10-1, they embrace a truth as old as humanity, that there is no greater love than to lay down one's life for another. As the smoke settles, American muskets fall silent. The cost is staggering, but the line has held. For an astonishing hour, they stopped the entire British advance, buying priceless time for thousands of Washington's men to reach safety. The mission is complete. The price is paid. Washington, watching from Cobble Hill, famously cries out, "Good God, what brave fellows, I must this day lose." Lord Sterling orders the remaining troops to retreat across the swamp. Some of the men who tried to cross are bogged down, only to be killed by British fire. Others who could not swim are captured. Samuel Smith, a 24-year-old captain, describes the ordeal. "I took my company through a marsh until we were stopped by the dam of a mill. It was too deep for the men to ford. I and a sergeant swam over and got 2 slabs of wood into the water, on which we ferried over all who could not swim." Lord Sterling, refusing to surrender his sword to Cornwallis, defiantly surrenders to a Hessian officer. The cost of the hour-long stand was devastating. 256 Marylanders are killed and 100 captured in the combined assaults, wiping out over 60% of the attacking force. One of the largest fatality rates for any battle in American history. Fewer than 12 managed to return back to Washington's camp. Fortunately for Gist, he miraculously survives. For those captured, many will perish from disease and starvation on English prison ships. By the late afternoon of August 27th, the total American losses are over 1,000 dead and wounded, and another 1,000 captured, with British losses under 400 killed and wounded.
Oh my gosh.
The army is surviving. The Maryland 400 had broken the trap, but the British are not done. Sir Henry Clinton is ready to make a final assault on Brooklyn. Washington's regrouped forces are pinned down, their backs to the river, with nowhere left to run. The next day, on August 28th, something unexpected happens. The British stop. Their army, poised to deliver the final blow that would crush Washington's forces, hold its position. A terrible rainstorm sweeps across Brooklyn, turning the ground to mud. But weather alone didn't explain the pause. The British commander, William Howe, was haunted by a memory. Bunker Hill. He remembered charging up that blood-soaked slope, the devastating volleys that cut down their men in rows. They had won that battle, but the cost had been terrible.
Reluctant to do it
Now,
again.
facing another entrenched American position, they hesitate. They would wait. They would do this carefully. Washington seizes the moment. Late in the night, with campfires burning to deceive the enemy, the Continental Army begins to move. Silently, desperately, they slip toward the East River. Boats ferry them across to Manhattan, oars muffled, voices hushed. Every man knows that discovery means annihilation. As dawn approaches, Washington faces a catastrophe. Thousands of men remain on the Brooklyn shore, and daylight would expose them to British cannons and warships. They would be sitting ducks, helpless targets, in the morning light. Then, on August 30th, just as the sun begins to rise, an impenetrable fog rolls in from the river, blanketing the entire evacuation. It comes at the precise moment needed, as if God himself has drawn a curtain across the scene.
So I just realised that it's been a very long time that I've just been watching that. I've been gripped. I can't take my eyes off it. How unbelievably fortunate. How lucky can you get? Oh my gosh. Okay. I want to see where this goes.
The fog holds. The British see nothing. Boat after boat slips across the water, and there, standing on the Brooklyn shore until the very end, is Washington himself, refusing to leave until every one of his men has escaped. At 7 in the morning, Washington steps onto the last boat. 9,000 men are evacuated.
What a leader. What's happened to Sterling? I know he surrendered to a Hessian soldier, he said earlier. What's happened to him? Has he been captured and taken onto one of the British ships? I don't know his fate. What an inspirational leader. Staying there right until the end on that last boat to make sure every one of his men is safe.
Not a single life is lost in the crossing. The Continental Army survives. The revolution survives. It was nothing short of miraculous. Later that morning, as the fog began to lift, the British woke to an astonishing sight.
Oh, can you imagine?
The American fortifications on Brooklyn are empty. The prize was gone. The war and Washington's army would live to fight another day. Washington's escape would not have been possible without one desperate sacrifice.
Yeah.
History calls them Washington's Immortals, the Maryland 400, most barely out of boyhood with an average age of 21. Led by Lord Sterling and Major Mordecai Gist. Their repeated charges against overwhelming odds, their refusal to break, even as they were cut down, had held back the British tide long enough for the Americans to reach safety. But the Maryland 400 didn't just save an army, they saved the revolution. Without their sacrifice, there would have been no evacuation, no fog-shrouded escape,
Washington, maybe.
no Continental Army to fight another day. The road to independence, to Yorktown, to victory, runs directly through that killing field in Brooklyn, where the Marylanders refused to yield. George Washington never forgot their bravery. He would later call the 1st Maryland Regiment his old line, troops he could depend on when all others broke. That tribute lives on today as Maryland's official nickname, the Old Line State. Their legacy also endures in another way. The 175th Infantry Regiment of the Maryland Army National Guard traces its lineage directly back to the 1st Maryland Regiment and the Maryland 400. On their coat of arms is the bayonet, representing its first introduction to American arms in the Battle of Long Island. The swan head is from the coat of arms of the Gist family, commemorating Major Gist.
Yeah.
The bodies of those young Marylanders were never properly buried. They fell where they fought, placed in shallow, unmarked graves, scattered across farmlands that are now the streets of modern Brooklyn. But their sacrifice endures. In Prospect Park today, a monument stands, not over their graves, but over their memory, a reminder of what they did on that desperate day. The Maryland 400 stood when retreat was the only rational choice. Who charged when surrender was inevitable? They gave everything so that a nation struggling to be born might survive. They fell in Brooklyn so that freedom would rise.
If you enjoyed this journey through history, subscribe to Clear and Present History for more documentaries and untold stories from the past. A like or comment helps keep these stories from being forgotten. And if you believe the lessons of history still matter, becoming a supporting member helps us go deeper, funding the research and production that allow us to explore overlooked stories and preserve the hard-won wisdom of the past. From all of us at Clear and Present History and myself, Steve Kristoff, thank you. Until next time.
Until next time. Oh my gosh. I love channels like this, like the Fat Electrician as well, Nick from his channel. I love that they're educating people about these amazing people in history that otherwise I've never heard of these before. I'm sure maybe a great deal, many of our viewers from the US haven't actually, maybe you haven't heard of them before. And that's why these people, these historians, these channels, oh my gosh, they're so important, aren't they? I'd hate to think that the next generation or my children grew up not being aware of the people who sacrificed so much for them, or not being aware of just the amazing things that people do. Oh gosh, Dummy 666, that got me a bit teary a few times there. It was a big ask of them, wasn't it? Of the Maryland 400. It was such a big ask, and it's a suicide mission, isn't it? And oh my gosh, they just kept charging, knowing not the only thing, but they weren't going to defeat this army that they were charging against. It was to buy their fellow soldiers enough time to escape. Oh my gosh. Oh, that's such a heartwarming story. It's so sad, but at the same time, it's so lovely. I am on a lighter note, can you imagine to be a fly on the wall? I would have loved to have seen the expressions of the British officers once they got into that area there on the to find that all the American forces had got over the river under the disguise of all the fog. Oh my, can you imagine the paddies that they would have had? The outbursts, the tantrums. That is such a heartwarming story, and it's lovely to see that the memories carried on in the crest, on the swan, and the bayonets on the modern regiments here. It's so lovely. I didn't know that Maryland was referred to as the old line. Oh, such a wonderful video. Thank you so much for requesting this, guys. I hope you enjoyed watching along with me. Take care of yourselves. I hope you're maybe not as bit teary as I am. Such a lovely story. Guys, take care of yourselves, and I will see you on the next video. Bye bye.